Hey, what's going on? Charlie here.
I'm Jean.
Thanks for tuning in. Very special episode today. Today we are here with Adam at Rabbit Hole Distillery in Louisville, Kentucky. Adam, thanks for coming on.
Charlie, Jean, this is awesome. I'm so happy to see you all here. Thanks for coming by and saying hi to me. We're gonna have a good time today.
Like, yeah, we are.
Like yeah.
So what do you got going for us today?
So we've got a few of our core lineup with something extra special at the end. We've got a flagship. We've got a rye, we've got a gin, and then we've got a 15-year-old Mizunara finish collection.
That one is exciting.
We've got some cool
I'm
stuff
excited
today.
to taste that
Well, what do you say? I mean, I tell you what, the best way to learn is just to jump in.
Jump in with both
It
feet.
really is.
All right.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna do something super important to me. All right.
Okay.
Left or right?
Yeah, going our left, your left,
Okay.
to your right. Yeah. So I feel like you can learn a lot about somebody if you ask them, you know, what they do for a living or what their hobbies are, but you don't really know somebody until you had a drink with them, right?
Fair enough.
It's the best way.
Yeah.
It's the best way to build a bond. So cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks
Cheers.
for coming, guys. This is gonna be awesome.
This is the what?
This is Cavehill.
Cavehill, okay.
Cavehill,
This is
Kentucky straight bourbon.
your 4 grain?
This is our 4 grain. This is our flagship. You know, when we started all the way back in 2012 is when Kave Zamanian, our owner, kind of established the name. And this was the first thing we started making. And we started making this in 2014. We're on the shelf in 2016 with this. 4 grains are one of those things that everybody thinks they know what it is until they actually have it. It's always a unique experience. 4 grains are very unique all the time, right?
Yeah.
So this one is not your traditional kind of 4 grain. You know, 4 grains are usually rye and wheat is the secondary grains, like a little bit of malt. This actually has a ton of malt. So this is 70% corn, and then this is 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley.
That's right, honey malted barley. That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Something I tell you, that's a unique grain.
It very
it's
much
not
is.
in a lot of whiskeys that we've had.
I think it's in any other whiskey that we've had.
What is it?
So honey malting, so basically you take that malted grain after you dried that grain out from the malting process, and then you roast it a little bit. So you can do several different levels, right? So you can do honey malting, it's just like a little bit of a roast. It gets like a honey color, but then it also has like a honey nose, a honey smell. When they're milling it here, the whole place smells like Honey Nut Cheerios.
Ooh.
It's pretty awesome, yeah.
Nice.
It's pretty great, but you can do like chocolate malts, coffee malts, espresso malts, caramel malts, all that, just kind of the level that you roast it at. That really is the secondary grain for Cavehill. That is, I mean, on the nose, the honey, that is really, and when this is fermenting, you can smell the honey from that grain as well. So this is, it's a different animal. First of all, it's got 30% malt, which is not your normal bourbon percentage, right? Yeah, that really, you know, Kave was a Scotch drinker before he was a bourbon drinker. In fact, what turned him into a bourbon drinker, he met a girl from Louisville named Heather when he was in Chicago, and she turned him into a bourbon drinker and then like drastically overshot the mark. Like really overshot it. And so when he moved to Louisville after they got married, he fell in love with bourbon. But as a Scotch drinker, when he started making bourbon, he knew that malted grains could have a whole lot more than just, you know, science. It's flavor, right? It's not just the catalyst, there are also a lot of flavor. So this being 30% malt brings a ton of flavor to it.
And there is a lot of flavors.
Now that you said Cheerio, I can't get Cheerio out of my glass.
No, right?
And I love the long finish. I mean, it's still lingering on my tongue, really delightful.
Yeah, I think our barrels have a lot to do with that. I mean, barrels are very important for flavor development.
Yes.
But we use Kelvin Cooperage. So Kelvin, I mean, we shout them out on every single bottle. We love them so much, we put their seal on every single bottle. They toast and char every single one of the barrels. They also do not use a gas flame. They build a wood fire underneath every single barrel. So that really, when you talk about flavor development, that the finish on this, that oak, is really, really coming hard on this one.
It's not over oaky or anything. It's just really, all of those flavors are married together nicely. There's nothing that just kind of stands out that's more than something else. It's just all dancing on my tongue.
Yeah, marries extremely well.
Balance is really the name of the game here. You know, it's, when you talk about bourbon, right, you've got to fit inside that box, right? It's one of the most highly regulated spirits on the planet, right? So it has to be so much corn, it has to be made certain place, right? It's got to be used in charred oak vessels, and it can only be used one, like all these things that you do, And the fact that you can't use any sort of flavorings or coloring, right, it really limits where you fit inside that box. But there's so many things that you can do on the front end, on the back end, everything from grain selection to barrel selection to the toast of the barrel to the temperature of your fermenters. I mean, so many things that you can do that really change the flavor in there, and finding balance can be very difficult within that box.
Who is your master distiller right now?
We actually don't have one.
Okay.
We don't have a master distiller.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
So we're really collaborative at Rabbit Hole.
Okay.
We didn't feel like we wanted one person running all aspects of the entire company. Even Kave, as the founder, relies very heavily on people around him that know things that maybe he doesn't. Right, Kave was a psychologist for 22 years. He has an amazing palate. He is like a mad scientist, like just coming up with new mash bills and finishes all the time. But he, people will say, well, tell me about your yeast. And he goes, no. It's like, I'm not the person you want to talk to about yeast, or I'm not the person you want to talk to about, where barrels live in warehouses and give you different flavors, right? He knows a little bit about it, but there are so many great minds in this industry. Just surrounding yourself with those people, not even just as employees, but mentors. His mentor is Larry Eversole, who was the master distiller for Seagram's, which is LDI or MGP. And it's one of the largest distilleries in the country. Everybody buys their rye whiskey from him. Well, we didn't, but he wanted that kind of knowledge base from Larry, right? We have a head of operations, Cameron Talley. He's about as close as you can get to a master distiller. Yeah. He's really running the production team, the distilling team. But, the sensory panel, we all sit down every single week, we taste through different stuff, and we make the decisions of, hey, these need to blend together, this is okay, this needs to go back for a little bit, let's go ahead and use this, it's starting to reach that saturation point of oak. I mean, that's really the important thing, is having a lot of palettes on it.
It sounds like you have a horrible job.
It's rough.
Really
It's really bad.
Slave labor here. Very cool.
Yeah.
I was like, trying to think of who your master distiller is, and I can't think of who it is, but that explains why I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's novel for the industry, but you're starting to see that more and more. A lot of people talk about master distillers. There's this great whiskey writer in the industry, Fred Minnick, put this great video up the other day talking about what is a master distiller? What is a master distiller, right? Because there is no certification that you can get, right? I mean, I could just make a business card that says master distiller, and what do you know? I call myself a master distiller. But it doesn't mean that I'm worthy of the title. And at the same time, not every distillery needs that one person. It works great for some people.
Obviously.
Right? Some distilleries, they work really well with having that master distiller, that rock star. As much of a rock star as I feel like I am, I don't ever want to call myself a master distiller. Maybe a master drinker. I'm really good at drinking bourbon. So that counts, right?
We could all have one of those medals.
Yeah, we could definitely do that, right? All right.
This is really good.
So let's do a 180 here.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go from bourbon to rye whiskey.
Yeah, now we're talking.
To rye whiskey, right?
Now, we let Adam actually choose these. I wasn't going to mention anything, but I got to tell you, he chose my favorite, which is the Cavehill, and Charlie's favorite, which is the Boxergrail. Just happened
I might have done a
do
little
that.
research. No, I will tell you, I'm from Louisville, so obviously I love bourbon. I am a rye guy. I love rye whiskey.
I'll go for that shirt.
Yeah,
I am a rye guy. I do love rye whiskey, and the most celebrated rye mash bill out there is a 95.5 rye.
Yeah.
95% rye, 5% malted barley. So we were just talking about MGP. So Larry, at Seagram's, they came up with that. Well, but popularized that 95.5, right? So this is not their distillate. This is our distillate. We wanted to use that 95.5 mash bill because it celebrates the rye, right? It highlights that rye grain. Really important. But we took it a little bit of a different angle. So first of all, that distillery, so Seagram's or LDI, whatever you want to call it, they're really known for using a lot of European rye, which is great. European rye is awesome. We don't use a European rye on this. We actually use a Canadian rye. Grain.
Really?
And that gives you a little bit of a different kind of flavor on there.
Right,
usually ryes are very aggressive. I feel like even though this is our most savory whiskey, it's still got a lot of sweetness.
It does.
So much aromatic in there.
Yeah, but you can tell right away this is a rye.
No, you definitely can. Yeah, it's still got, I can tell you the Kentucky hug is still there.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's working. Right down here is where you get all that pepper. But this, for me, I get like pipe tobacco and rose water. Like all day long.
Rose water's good. Yeah, that's a good.
It's very aromatic. There's a lot of It's a lot there. It's like kind of like when you walk into, it's 1950s, you're walking into a house during Christmas time, you instantly know it's Christmas time. It's the smell of that real Christmas trees right there.
Yeah.
You know this is rye. Everything's inviting, warms you in, welcomes you in, shakes your hand. How you doing? Have a seat. Let's talk. That's this kind of rye.
This is definitely a baking spice kind of rye.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I will tell you, and I never say this note until after everybody's kind of tried it, because I never want to put this in your head. But after you've taken that drink and you're kind of working through the finish, think about this: black tea. You get a black. I always get a huge black tea sort of finish on this rye.
Okay.
Some people do, some people don't. It's always huge to me.
I've never had black tea, so I can't.
Oh, there you go.
So.
Well, you know, now that you're in Louisville, the capital of black tea, no,
Okay.
it's not.
All right.
It's,
Maybe like a black cherry almost. It's
Yeah.
got like that sweetness there too.
Well,
So-
that might be a black cherry, like a dark cherry you find in like a good old fashioned.
Oh,
that
yeah.
type of cherry.
Oh yeah, like those real, like basically dark kind of stone
Yes.
fruit.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a lot of like citrus and darker fruit on this. The finish for me, I think, is amazing because I think this is a great example. So a lot of times in my job, I encounter people that are not whiskey drinkers, right? They don't like to drink whiskey. They never drank a lot of whiskey, and so there's always this hurdle to get over. How do I tell the difference between spice and alcohol? They both kind of burn, right?
Right.
And I think this is a great example of it because alcohol burns you kind of down here, right? It's where you don't taste. You just feel it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This one gives you the spice like on the sides of the tongue, on the back of the tongue.
Yes.
That is really the difference between like alcohol burn and a spice burn.
Right.
And that's where like the white pepper, the cinnamon, the black pepper really show up back here.
And it's doing that.
See, I don't get any Kentucky hug with this at all, though.
Which is crazy for a rye, too.
Yeah.
95.5 rye,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh, it's just a gorgeous nose. So yeah, we were talking earlier. This is the only one we haven't reviewed. Yeah, we reviewed all of them except for the rye. We just haven't released them all yet.
Little sneak peek.
Yeah, but this is by far my favorite.
Yeah. And I think the reason is because the bottle is down to like
Yes,
right here.
that's exactly.
Oh, there you go, right?
Exactly.
It's really oxidized a little.
Yeah, there's no visual oomph or presence there for you. So you're welcome.
Extra congeners in there. Yeah, yeah, this is really an entry level rye. I feel like if you ever encounter someone that says they don't like rye whiskey, this is a great one to go with. This teaches somebody how to like rye whiskey.
That's true.
And this is a 47.5, is it not?
Yeah, both of these
Okay.
are 95 proof, absolutely. 95 is great for us, you know. We like 95 because it sits right between that traditional sipping proof of 90 and the traditional cocktail proof of 100, right? So you kind of split that difference where you can sip this neat, no problem. You can put it on ice, no problem. You can make a great cocktail with it, no problem. Like it kind of works all the way across on any of those vehicles.
So I'm getting a clove finish now. Very tasty.
Those barrels, I'm telling you, those barrels, the toasting element of that barrel brings out so much barrel spice. You know, Kelvin lets it sit there. So like I said, it's not a gas flame. They sit on these racks that have the oak kind of left over, right? It's just leftover oak from shaping the barrel heads and the staves, and they let it sit on top of those racks, and they get it up to 500 degrees. And so they let it sit at 500 degrees until it combusts, or like we say in Kentucky, catches on fire. As soon as it catches on fire, it takes about 15 minutes or so. That's when it's gone from toasting to charring. And then they'll let it char for about 30, 45 seconds, give you a level 3 on this. The toasting is where it's really pulling so many more lignin out of that wood, so many more congeners and esters, even types of alcohol kind of out of that wood closer to the inside of that stave. So when you char it, that red layer is a lot closer up. You get more of that flavor when it's aging. So as that whiskey is kind of passing through that filtration level of char and kind of reaching that red layer, it's going to be picking up so much barrel spice and so much more vanillins and things like that. So that's really why, even with something like this, it's not going to have a ton of bite, but the spice is there.
Yeah.
And there's tons of
Spice,
spice.
yeah, they
It is-
linger, they
it
sit.
is beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm still tasting it. I don't know the last time that I took a sip, but it's still on my tongue, just lingering in a nice little way.